Good afternoon. My name is Pamela DiPatrizio. This topic is on serious gaming and skill retention in emergency and critical care nurses. Disclaimer. Lieutenant Colonel Pamela A. DiPatrizio have no relevant financial or non-financial relationship to disclose relating to the content of this presentation. The views expressed in this presentation are those of the author and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of the Department of Defense, the Naval Postgraduate School, nor the U.S. government. The objectives for today: introduction, definition of serious gaming, discuss the history of serious gaming, functions of serious games, core components of serious games, classification of serious games, purpose, functionality, health, players, wellness, and serious games and skill retention in emergency and critical care nurses. Approximately 44,000 and up to 440,000 people die annually from medical errors that are preventable. Researchers stated medical errors should be ranked the third leading cause of death in the United States. However, shortcomings in tracking vital statistics may hinder research and keep the problem out of the public eye. According to the Institute of Medicine, reported states that at least 250,000 Americans die each year from medical and surgical errors. The reason there is a discrepancy in the data is that physicians, funeral directors, coroners, and medical examiners rarely note on a death certificate that the human error and system failures involved. As one of the most extensive healthcare systems in the nation, it is crucial to ensure our healthcare workers have the appropriate training, education, and skill level. More importantly, educating and training the military, emergency, and critical care nurses in garrison and deployed environments are even more critical and continue to be a major challenge for the armed forces. The benefits for serious games with using deliberate practice and education for emergency and critical care nursing far outweigh the challenges. Deliberate practice provides an important conceptual framework to guide the use of serious games as a science of training. There are gaps in research literature. There's very little research literature to prove the effectiveness of using serious games. However, the benefits for nursing are evident, especially enhancing critical thinking beyond protocol and critical pathways. The purpose of this text talk today is to present the benefits of serious games as a curriculum training platform using deliberate practice to enhance skill retention in emergency and critical care nurses. Some definitions of serious games. In 1970, Clark Apt a first definition of what is a serious game. A game is an activity among two or more independent decision makers seeking to achieve their objective in some limiting context. In 2005, Stokes defined serious games as games that are designed to entertain players as they educate, train, or change behavior. In 2006, according to Michael and Chen, defined serious games as follows. A serious game is a game in which education in a various form is the primary goal rather than entertainment. I define serious games as entertaining and engaging, thinking activity to problem solve, decision make, increase learning outcomes, and the ability of the player to retain and reapply the knowledge to real-world situations. Most of serious game articles found that most definitions encountered in either research or industry agreed that serious games include entertainment dimensions. A serious game also has the potential to enhance the user's experience through multimodal interactions. This can be in different contexts such as education, training, health, or interpersonal communication. Most researchers agreed that digital serious games contain different media, which can be a combination of text, graphics, animations, and so forth. The serious term in serious games comes from their role of conveying some message or input, to be it knowledge, skill, or in general some content to the player. This means that the player is exposed to an environment which delivers a content emulating from a know-how or experience well-being, education, and health. Some of the history of serious games. The concept of serious games was first coined by Clark Apt when he created a book called Serious Games to improve the educational system inside and outside of the classroom. The advertising of one of the world's first commercial video game consoles, the Odyssey. It launched in 1972 with the emphasis the device potential as an education tool. I remember this game. It was a big yellow board-like game that actually played paddle tennis, and I would spend hours in front of that. In 1981, a simulated tool known as the Bradley Trainer was developed for the American Army to train new recruits in how to operate Bradley tanks. This was developed by a team from Atari and was based on the Battlezone arcade game, which is to be the first virtual reality arcade game. In 1982 and 83, we saw the release of several arcade games, such as Pole Position, as well as the first Atari console, and I couldn't wait to get that one, and I did get that one. And we played other games such as Pepsi Invaders, which included the elements of advertising, and this was called the Advert game. In 1996, the Marine Dome game was used to train members of the U.S. Marine Corps. In 2002, a first-person shooter game named American Army was developed by the U.S. Army and distributed free of charge over the internet. The game simulated military training exercises and combat missions with the goal of promoting the American Army and as a recruitment tool for young people between the ages of 16 and 84. And Sawyer considered the American Army's the first successful and well-executed serious game that gained total public awareness. Another breakthrough game was Star Wars. It was introduced in 2003. And a recent market showed that the worldwide serious game market is worth $1.5 billion. Then there was a bilateral game that was introduced and marketed in 2006. And it had an immersive learning environment that teaches the preparation, execution, and understanding of the bilateral meeting in a cultural context. Then in 2009 was the second generation of the VBS-1. It was introduced. It had capabilities for training, simulation, and development. And in 2012, a new version of the flight simulator game was launched. The functions of serious games. A game is a physical or mental contest with a goal, or it has an objective. It's played according to the framework or a set of rules which determines what a player can and cannot do inside the game world. The first component is the rule or gameplay, which creates the patterns defined through the game rules that connects the player and the game. The second component is the challenge, which determines the bonuses to reward and the good actions or the obstructions and barriers that avoid the player reaching the game's goals easily. Challenges are used to create the different difficulty levels of the game in order to encourage enjoyment and motivates the player to spend even more time playing the game. The third component is the interaction, which represents the way the player communicates with the game. Interaction refers to any action that is done by the player to start some activity. Interaction can be visual, it can be listening, it can be physical, using a mouse, typing, and they're supported by specific tools which represents equipment or accessories that are connected to the game to give the input information to the system. For example, the player may use a Wii balance board as a tool in an exercise game to improve his or her motor skills after operation. The last component is the objective, which is defined as something that one's efforts or actions are intended to accomplish. There's two types of objectives, and they can be distinguished by specified and implied. While the specific objective is only entertainment, nature of every game, the implied objective includes increasing skills, abilities, gaining knowledge, or gaining experience. The next thing I'm going to talk about are the core components of serious game. The creation of a serious game involves different processes, technologies, and a specialist. On this slide, it illustrates how they are related. The first component is the developer team, which may consist of managers, designers, programmers, researchers, content provider, which is considered the expert. If it's a small team, a person may assume many roles. They may be the game designer and the game tester, and at the same time, software or engineer person. The tools, they can be separated into three main groups that work together: the game engine, the database, and the engine software application. All of them are working together. The next is the content is provided by the expert and converted to useful information according to the objective of what the serious game is for. The content provider who provides not only the information related to the content, but also shares his experience to define the game parameters, such as the level of difficulty. It could be easy, medium, or hard, or the proper reward and the obstructions to put within the game. The content providers are professionals and they're experts in a specific application domain to create the serious game. The developer team has to determine the tools, the technology, and the contents they have to use in the game. Then there's the technology, is the branch of knowledge that deals with the creation and the use of technical means and their interrelations with life, society, and the environment, drawing upon such subject as industrial arts, engineering and applied sciences, etc. There are two technologies used. They're virtual and augmented reality. The virtual reality refers to the computer simulated environment that can simulate the physical presence in places located in the real world, as well as the imagery worlds. And the augmented reality is a technology which allows computer-generated virtual imageries to exactly overlay the physical objects in real time. Then there's the game objectives, is the main focus on education, training, and informing in an effective and inclusive manner. Other objectives can be practice, testing, simulation, can diagnose, treat. There can be more than one objective. For example, serious games for critical care, they're not just focused on the education, but they can also focus on the assessment of the patient, the diagnostics, the interventions, and critical decision making as well. Then there's the game genre. It's used to categorize the games based on their gameplay. So adventurous games, which involve exploration of and interaction with the environment. Then there's the strategy games, which players require tactics to be used. Then there's puzzle games, which require the player to move puzzle pieces, move them, like either move through maze, logical problems, or positioning different pieces together. Then there's the action games, in which players are required to have more reflexes, hand-eye coordination, quick reaction times, and things like that. Then there's the simulated games that attempt to realistically mimic the conditions of a particular environment or activity or person. Then we have the platform. The platform is also called the video game, which refers to the specific combination of electronic or computer hardware in conjunction with the software, and it allows a video game to operate. The game platforms can be separated into 4 types. You have the arcade type, console type, such as Nintendo, Xbox, PlayStation. Then you have the handheld, the Game Boys, the iPads, the Nintendo DS. Then you have the personal computers, your desktops and laptops. Then there's special equipment. This is the interface devices used in the virtual environment. It serves as portals into a virtual world, 3D vision goggles or 3D LCD screens used for vision-based imagery control on serious games. Then we have the players. Players can be professionals, non-professionals, skilled, experienced, achievers, explorers, elder children. There's numerous different types of players. Next, I'm going to talk about the different classification of serious games. Just like there are many different conflicting definitions of serious games and their use for learning purposes, there are several different attempts to classify serious games in typologies. There are 3 main serious games for health according to their main purposes. There's the classification by purposes. So the focused on entertainment. In addition to entertainment, there is a need to move some parts of the body, so the wellness is obtained as a bonus. An example of the focused on entertainment would be the Dance Revolution or the Wii. Then there's the focused on health. The main goal is health, but the game is used as a tool to pass on knowledge and skills. For example, like Sky Medic game, the difficulty airway algorithm game is also another one that it could be considered focused on health. Another focused on health, acquisitions and medical skills. In this case, the game has a serious use for health purposes regarding a need of a virtual viewpoint or simulation to avoid or alleviate risk or safety. Then there's a classification by functionality of serious games. So the first one is the serious games application area, which describes the part of the real world being modeled by the software. In serious games for health, they distinguish the 2 main aspects of the cognitive skills, such as memory, attention span, concentration, and reasoning, and then the motor skills, such as general conditions or relearning to walk after an injury. The interaction technology includes the virtual reality. It's like using a headset-mounted display, a computer monitor device, such as a glove or pen or tracking device. Then there's the game interface. And the game interface under the applications it's related to the virtual world inside the game, which can simulate the real world in a 3-dimensional, like 3D. Then there's a number of players. It could be single or multiple. Then the game genre, which is categorized according to the gameplay. We can distinguish adventure, strategy, simulation, sports, or puzzles. Then there's the adaptabilities, which represents the adaptability of difficulty according to the skill of the player or in order to increase the playability and enjoyment. Then there's the performance feedback. It's an indication of the game which deals with showing the users their status and their abilities. Then there's the game hardware probability, which refers to being able to physically move the game hardware, from example, from a hospital to a clinic. Then there's the game engine, is the platform which provides commonly used game functionalities and tools that allow the developer to create, edit, design, and functionalities themselves. Then there's the platform, which means the hardware the game runs on. Is it Nintendo? Is it Wii? Is it Microsoft? Is it Xbox? Smartphones, etc. is what they mean by that. Then there is the connectivity. It is the ability to link to and communicate with other systems and electronic devices, software, or the internet. Then there's the classification by stages of disease. There's the susceptibility stage, which is the first stage in which a person is still healthy. A serious game in this stage helps the user to familiarize them with monitoring procedures and with illness that he or she may develop later. Then there's the pre-symptomatic stage. In this, people feel healthy, although the illness is already present, so it's like the pre-diabetic. The beginning of this stage may be discovered by having periodic checkups with your primary care doctor. Then there's the clinical disease stage. In the third stage, the symptoms of this illness are already manifested in the patient, either an acute condition or it's becoming a chronic condition at this point. Then there's the rehabilitation, which is the restoration of health and life after the illness. And this is where the rehabilitation part takes place following like a stroke. Then there's the classification of the players, the wellness, the patients and the non-patients. Serious games for the patients are health monitoring. It's aimed to keep an eye on the patient's health by monitoring the biosignals, such as heart failure, using telemetry. Then there is the serious games for non-patients. It's the health and wellness games focused on lifestyle issues and relationships with functional health. So now I'm going to talk about the principal objective of this talk with serious games and skill retention. It's to help the nurses to be able to react correctly in a situation under pressure and to make good decisions that will save the lives of patients. Serious games are a way for healthcare professionals to retain and develop knowledge, skills, and attitudes while protecting patients from unnecessary risk. After reviewing several articles, at least 8 studies conducted on serious game technologies, its potential to enhance learning and increase knowledge and attitudes and improve the performance were even evident after a 3-month period when compared to the traditional educational methods. However, like I said in the beginning, there's really a lack of research. There's not enough research on serious games to do with nursing specific, especially emergency and critical care. And there's truly not enough validated evidence to support either way at this point of serious games. But the use of deliberate practice in itself that focuses on outcome-based objectives, repetitiveness, student-centered learning, and feedback are really critical. So on this first one, this interactive trauma trainer was developed in UK, and the original aim of them developing this was not so much of the surgical training prototype, but rather to demonstrate two key issues that we experience in the deployed environment, which are hemorrhagic shock and cricothyroidotomies. which are the two main leading causes of death on the combat zone. So as you can see, they have the fragment where there's pulsating hemorrhage on the neck area, and they're going to stop and occlude the bleeding. They also are able to do a cricoid thyroidotomy on this simulation and game, and it also scores and gives you how long it takes you to react and do certain things in minutes, and it gives you an overall score, as you can see, on key issues that could potentially save a life. This is a serious game, Vital Signs for Nursing. It was designed to create the clinical reasoning and priority setting of a nurse on a typical floor med-surgical unit, and it exercises their decision making and are they able to prioritize under stress. This game, they use a 5-step nursing process. It also is a very good game because it actually scores them. This is one I ran into recently, actually in this class, the difficulty airway algorithm and resuscitative cricothyroidotomies, which I have not gotten to play this game yet, but I am very looking forward to playing it, very eager. The learner manages the difficult airway using the vortex approach with the same equipment they would have to use on a cricoidotomy set, which is the scalpel spreaders and the bougie. I'm excited about trying this game and letting you know what it's like in the future. My references. And thank you for listening today.